So yeah, these are the tactics I came up with so I don't fall asleep while I read. I'm gonna be very honest. My what you call fact finder is number 4, and because of my language skills, it was probably closer a lot lower than that. But this is what I do. I summarize after I read it. I summarize the chapter if it needs to be. So here, and I actually write on the book as I read through it. And so if you'll notice here, oops. Here. If I go through this book, one of the things that you will notice is that I can here. I summarize it. I take out any points that I wanna remember, and then typically, if you go through this book with me, you'll notice that I can actually repeat back pretty much every chapter. But the other part is that I actually see how this actually implements in my life. So while this is happening, I actually have book notes, and I actually revamped my entire organization while I was going through this on the parts that I want to change. I wanted to see how it worked. So you can take any part of your life, and then you can kind of just think through it and through this book. And as you get to do that, so look at this. This is actually the reference. So this is called switch, and then this is like notes I started taking. You'll see that in some cases I took notes here. So to me, I take a workbook approach, and this really made a difference. So now actually there's an organizational revamp that's coming that you guys are not aware of, but you know, I'm waiting for me to finish the book before I do anything. Why? Because I want to make sure that it's actually done well. And so while going through this, my brain was, you know, basically updated. Why? Because I actually went through the exercises and actually thought through the exercises and made sure that I did them. And right now, if you talk to me, you'll notice that I can talk to just about every subject, and I will probably remember most of the stories in this book. And I didn't rush through the book. That's the key thing. So I want you to read differently. I want you to actually work through the book. I don't want you to go for the information. Forget the information. You will get the information if you actually work through it. So that's actually how I read a book. And it gets better and better each time I read another book. So the notes are in here, you know, there's everything. That's why I recommend you buy the book, because you can do that. If not, some people need to do this. I used to have to do this. You can get it from the library if you need a deadline. So that's actually how I used to force myself to read. I get a book from the library because I know the deadline's coming. Yeah, and then I see, oh, I only have a week, and that's actually the week that I read the book. So that's how I used to do it, because any book that I bought used to not get read. And now I'm finally out of that cycle because I've read enough books where that went down. For those of you, then you can use an external notebook to write it, because that's how I used to do it before. I used to have extensive notes on any of the books. I used to capture the information. That's one of the reasons I have as much information as I do today. So in case you're wondering, where does he get all this information? About a third of it comes from reading my books like this. So I just want to cover that because, yes.
Question, so do you review those, or do you, when you write those summaries, do you often go back and look, or is it the process of writing the summary actually kind of locks it in?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I write it to process it so I can stay focused on it, number one. But when I actually start implementing it, you have to go back. You don't have a choice.
Sure.
Because the tools typically they suggest are multifaceted. So if you don't go back, you're only using 2 parts of the tools.
Right.
So
you go back mostly to the summaries, or do you, and then just go into the book?
Just the summaries.
Okay.
Yeah, just the summary. That's it. I did it because I wanted to be able to read it quickly.
Yeah.
I didn't want to waste time anymore. And so it used to be that I'd always just read the first sentence of the chapters, and that would actually be helpful. But now, actually, I like having a summary if it warrants it. You'll notice that some chapters don't. And it's because I didn't find it either necessary or, you know, it wasn't necessarily appropriate.
And do you read the whole book, or do you leave out parts of?
I read the whole book.
Okay.
I read the whole book because, and the reason is because I want to learn how to think like the author. And if the author wrote a chapter, then that means that the author thought in that manner, and
Right.
for some reason was
Okay.
important. And so I do two things. If it's really excruciating, then I skip through those parts that are excruciating and I come back. But in general, 70% of the time I read everything. I do not skip. Why? Because typically I found that if I'm doing this over and over again, it's a part that I skip that kills me. Every time, the parts that I skip that kills me. Why? Why are you skipping that part? Because it's painful for you. And the part that are painful for you, guess what? Are the parts that you need for your life to work. Right? So we don't think in those terms. But those are the parts that typically the parts that we say are the most boring, are the parts that are the most useless, are the dumbest or whatever, are the parts that exactly we need. So the answer to that, the short answer is yes, I read every chapter.
And what is different on your iPhone than in here?
Most of the time, actually, I write down the notes. I used to write down the notes that I wanted to remember, the information that I wanted to reference back. So it's actually, this is under a category that's called reference list. So, any information you will see that I want to keep, it's a reference list. So I used to have a very rich reference list under my planner. Man, my planner got lost. I lost that. So I started recollecting. See, here's something that you should know about me. I don't try and go back and regain what I lost. To me, that's God's will. So I just started, where I left off. So watch this. I have the 12 ways Colby to solve problem. How to make stress your friend. I think that was a TED talk. Why East and Western cultures tackle learning differently. Trustworthiness, threat, life purpose, right and left brain, mapping emotions on body switch. So whenever I want to reference any of this information that I don't want to actually actively remember, guess what? I go in, pop, it's there. I can show, I can forward. You get the idea.
Well, is that just a list and where you'll find it, or do you actually can click on that and you'll get the info?
Oh, both.
Okay.
Both. But no, here,
Yeah.
if you click on it, the information is right there. So let's say, for instance, here, I'll show you. So this, I'm going to say, is very important because if you start doing that in the beginning, you'll start noticing your life changing very, very quickly, actually. So watch this. This is in one of the things. Emotions and pictures, right? And then this is a good emotion list. And I took that because oftentimes I want to talk to people about, what emotions to choose and things like that, how to recognize your emotions. And, we have a list of 500, names for emotions. But this is just a quick and easy, thing. So I was like, what, I like this. So I just put it in there just in case I need it. I haven't had a need for it so far, but I know it's going to come in handy. These are the differences between the right and the left brain. And actually, primarily the reason I put it in there is because I do a lot of research on the brain. If you've known me long enough, you'll notice that I do a lot of research on the brain. And sometimes I actually need to reference information, and so I put it in there. And then sometimes it actually comes in handy talking to my clients. And then life purpose. This is actually 5 questions on how to find your life purpose. And I actually have enough information, but it was so short and succinct. I put this in there in case I needed to have a 5-minute talk with somebody on finding your life purpose. So it was a TED talk, and it was actually a 5-minute talk. And I thought, you know what? I don't actually believe in this, but it's a good conversation piece, and I find it useful. So
you're taking, you'll write the summary here, and you may take 1 or 2 of these summaries and have a topic, and it's there for you.
Sometimes if I find it useful, the whole thing.
Right.
Like in Switch's case, I put the whole thing down. So.
But this is more like right on in-hand reference for things that you want to
something I'm going to use right now.
Right.
Something that I'm going to reference back because, I'm going to reference it back later. And something I am quite sure I will not remember the details. So I'm great with concepts. I am bad with details. That's why I started this. So if, let's say, for instance, you're great with details but you're bad with concepts, then guess what you do? You write down the concepts so that you can actually reference the concepts. So however it works. But this is an external memory of yours so that you don't have to remember.
Okay. And do you use a specific app for that?
Evernote is the best one that I found so far.
Okay.
But really anything, like any Word document will do. So, okay. So that's actually where I want to start. So now